So, dear friends, I guess tonight we'll try and tackle the most difficult aspect of the Buddha's teaching, but I will try and do my best and be as brief as possible. Anyway, tonight's topic is about the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, and the 3 universal characteristics of existence, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And usually they can be understood together, you know. So we've already talked a little bit about these things, and tonight I'll try and go a little bit more in detail. But please keep this in mind. You do not have to remember all these things. I mean, if you have this sort of curiosity, it can be useful, but and especially you don't have to believe in these things, as the Buddha said. We have to realize these things during the practice, because all these are just concepts, basically. They may be useful, but they're just concepts. So if we do not understand them, never mind. It's not a problem. Okay? So in Buddhism, we could say that the primary emphasis is placed upon understanding. So the Buddha says that wisdom or insight is the method for achieving ultimate freedom, nibbana. So, we could say that it's not a faith-based tradition. It's a Gnostic tradition. It's based on deep understanding. So I guess once it was asked to the Buddha whether if a person was, had very much faith in the Buddha and his teaching and would do dana, would that be enough to break free from the cycles of rebirth? And of course the answer was no. That's good, but not good enough, because insight practice is fundamental. You can't do without it. What a pity. But anyway, so what one has to understand with wisdom is the true nature of existence, the way things are, the Dhamma, meaning that all conditioned phenomena are subject to change. That's the idea. And it means understanding the nature of one's own existence. In order to get free from clinging, as we've seen that clinging is basically the cause for dukkha, for suffering, one has to understand the nature of one's own existence to penetrate through these obstacles or delusion of I, me, mine, myself, which are a mental construct, basically. They're not real, just useful but not real. And to see things as they really are. This means to understand our own being in terms of the 5 aggregates, of the 5 khandhas. And then to see into the actual characteristics or the real nature of these 5 aggregates, which is of course anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Okay. So the Pali word is khandha, aggregate, which can be seen as the basis for a classification of experience into its basic constituents. We could say that the Buddha used the scalpel of his own insight practice to see how things really work. And what he found out was that these are the 5 basic constituents, but there is no solid self or permanent self. What in the Indian tradition was called atta. Everything was atta, atta, atman, 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 atman. So something which is solid, not destructible, that goes from one life to another life. How can we say? From an historical point of view, the real innovation of the Buddha's teaching was the teaching of anatta, non-self, not self. He said, in my own experience, I haven't found anything to be permanent. And it was a real change in the history of religions and stuff like that. Still today, no one else has said that. Anyway. Let's skip this. So, what are these 5 aggregates? We know already about them. 1, form, rupa. Especially this physical body. We take this as rupa, which is the basis for all experience. It's a sort of necessary instrument for experience. It's, now, the important thing to remember is that rupa is the only one which is material. The other 4 are mental. So, the other 4 aggregates pertain to the mental side of experience. Just rupa is from the physical side of experience. So, 2, sensations. Please bear in mind, Vedana. Let's be real clear. Sensations or Vedana are not what we call emotions. No. They are the very basic, primal, like it, don't like it, don't know. Like, don't know, we could say neutral. Okay. So, they are not emotions, what we call emotions. Just this very basic felt sense, felt tone. That's the English expression which is usually used. 3, perceptions, sanya, we will see them anyway. The name we give things, we were talking about that the other night. 4, that's really important, sankhara. Usually translated as volitional activities or mental activity or mental formations. And then 5, vijnana, consciousness. So we have 5. 1 is rupa, the other 4 are nama. 1 is material, the other are mental. Okay? This basic distinction. So, when we look into the nature of things as they really are, I mean, when we practice meditation, from morning till night, what we are actually trying to do is to discover what is actually there. What is actually going on. And what we find constantly is these 5 aggregates, which, keep in mind, is not one or the other. They're all there together. And they're all working together. Okay? So, one may be more prominent than the other at certain times, but they are all there at the same time, actually. So, we find what? When we stay there practicing? The physical body, with the sense faculties, hearing, touching, smelling, seeing, through which we experience objects in the world around us. as well as in the inner workings of our mind. So that's really important, because in this tradition there are physical and mental feelings. Imagine this. Even just thinking about something will give you either a pleasant, an unpleasant, or a neutral feeling. Do you agree with that? It's not just touching, or something, but just remembering something, planning something, thinking about something, That is enough, and that is usually called a mental feeling. So there is this very precise distinction, but of course very true. Then we will have then physical body, okay. Then some kind of feeling present. Then some kind of perception. This is whatever, Then, very important, there's a whole bundle or a mass of various mental activities, sankharas. And then there will be this basic awareness, which is consciousness, which makes all of this possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't know. Very simple. Now, according to the Buddha's teaching, we do exist as a sort of functional entity. I mean, it's useful to say that I am me, you are you, in a conventional way, in a conventional sense, Of course, I have my own history, my own biography, and you have yours, But just from a conventional point of view. It's not from an absolute point of view. So we have two levels. Let's put it like that. A conventional level and an absolute level. And when we actually try to find out what is actually happening when we experience anything, we find the 5 aggregates. Nothing more, nothing less. There is no one behind it. Because usually we have this false identification. It's very deep core, which says, I am experiencing. I am doing. According to the Buddha's teaching, this is not really true. There is a doing, but there is nobody who does it. Of course there are thoughts, but there is nobody who is thinking. Hard to believe. It's just, Dhamma's arising, Dhamma ceasing. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the basic idea. Now, let's look a bit more closely to each of them, just to get a little bit of a more precise idea about them. So, the first aggregate is the aggregate of the material form, rupa. And this first aggregate is said to consist of firstly the 4 primary elements. That's it. Earth, fire, water, air. So rupa is made up of those things primarily. Then we will see differences. Of course, these words, this classification comes from an ancient Indian way of looking at things. So we may use other words, other terms, but that's the basic idea. It's made up of these things. It's these elements. Hmm? We could also see these elements like 4 different modes in which matter occurs. 3 different manifestations of matter. This energy, which sometimes it manifests as hard, like resistance, earth element. Other times it's heat, cold, fire element, Other times it's air, movement, air element, light. Water is not so easy to see, because it's said that that keeps things together. Like when you're making a cake, you use water to, put all the various ingredients together, and but you do not actually see the water after a while, because it's been absorbed by the other, ingredients, basically. But it's there. If water weren't there, it wouldn't be together, of course. Now, out of these basic constituents come out a variety of other material phenomena. The most important are the sense faculties. Eye, nose, ear, They come out of those elements, basically, So now, it's important to keep in mind that according to this tradition, the mental elements are as real as the physical elements. They are not just a byproduct of matter. So mind is not a byproduct of matter. It's actually the other way around, according to this tradition. Matter is a creation of the mind. So, very different from the way we are used to think about things from a scientific point of view, materialistic point of view. This is a more spiritualistic point of view. But without any further disquisitions about these things, it's very simple. It's like they have equal footing, They are as real, those mental things, as the material things. Okay? That's it, It's, Number 2. It's the first of the mental aggregates, and it's the aggregate of feeling, Vedana. We could call it in English this felt tone of an experience. Good, bad, I don't know. That's it, basically. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, okay. We know very well the unpleasant ones. Usually we take the pleasant ones for granted. Yes. We have a right to them, yes, of course. And the neutral, we have no idea. Usually we have no idea about those. And also remember this. There is a contact that takes place from the outside world through the hearing, feeling, touching, the eye base, the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, etc. But there is also a contact internally. The example I used before, there is a thought that comes up in the mind. There is actually a contact of that thought with the mind. And that contact can be pleasant, unpleasant, neutral as well. So that's why we practice metta, usually. Yes? We make a specific thought come up in the mind. That thought impacts the mind. That is usually felt as something hopefully nice. Hopefully. Sometimes it's boring or, hopefully sometimes it's nice. That's the basic idea. Other times, I'm just so tired, I just don't know what am I doing here at this time of the night. This nonsense. The third one is the aggregate of perceptions, sanya. And it is usually analyzed into perception of the 6 kinds of objects. Hearing, touching, etc. And we could say that the function of perception is to select something in the field of awareness. We have this very wild field of awareness, very many possible things. Sanya just focuses in on one thing at that particular moment. For example, imagine a loud sound. Perception goes there. And it says, noise. Okay? The smell of the kitchen. Oh, food. Okay. That is perception. That is the function of perception. It doesn't mean that sounds are not also present at that moment, but at that moment, perception decides that that is most interesting, especially if I'm hungry. Okay? That's the basic idea. So it just directs, the flow of attention, let's call it like that. More or less. It's not so easy. And perception serves as the basis for memory. We remember things thanks to perception. Imagine this. It's the first retreat we do together. I see you. I haven't seen you before. I say, oh, nice lady. She's wearing specs. It's, gray hair, quite tall, German. That is perception. I don't even know your name. Okay? We stay in a silent retreat. We never talk. I go away. I still do not know your name. We come for another retreat. And I recognize you. And since we are not still in noble silence, I say, oh, weren't you at the last retreat? So that's a memory, and that is a function of perception. So perception just sees a few things, makes a file, and then puts it into the memory, And then it brings it up again and says, oh, haven't I seen you before someplace, like in a meditation retreat? So that's the way it goes, basically. According to this system, this idea. Fourth aggregates is very important. Sankhara. Volitional activities or mental factors. The actual literal meaning of sankhara is things or activities that put things together, that construct, that fabricate, that create. So sankharas are actually very active. They make up things. They create realities, things, phenomena. The primary of this is the will to act. So there is a sound, comes into contact with the ear base. Okay? Hearing consciousness comes up. Vedana. Nice, not so nice, neutral. Oh, a loud car, perception. And then we decide to do something. Okay? Yeah, maybe. According to perception, there is a volitional activity then, you know? Because if the perception is different, the volitional activity might be different. Like, oh, nice bird. I wonder what that is. Let me have a look out the window. So that's a different form of volitional activity, you know, based on the perception that I have, you know, at that moment, you know. And the same kind of perception may make me do different things. Smell of food depends on whether I am hungry or not. If I am really hungry, I'm going up to the kitchen. If I'm not feeling well, you know, I'm sick with the flu and I'm vomiting all the time, it just makes me sick. You know? But it is the same smell. And I do recognize it as the same smell. So you see, there are very many different things coming into play into these things, not just one, you know. And they interact with each other all the time. So it's not just one or the other. No, they work together. Actually, it's not so easy. So it's said that among the 5 aggregates, this is the aggregate that's primarily responsible for creating karma. Sankhara creates karma, volitional activity. In fact, the Buddha said, it is volition that I call karma. Very simple, very clear. You know? Nothing more, nothing less. So, it's the aggregates of volitional activities, of sankhara, that motivates actions, either bodily actions, verbal actions, or speech, or just thoughts, planning, remembering, things like that. Okay? Good. And then, last but not least, vijnana, consciousness. It's this basic awareness that lights up the objective field through one or another of the 6 sense bases. So, there's a general awareness of what is going on. Then, through one of the 6, you know, I decide I'm listening, I'm seeing, you know, because according to this, to the Abhidhamma basically, to the Theravada Abhidhamma, just one consciousness can exist at a particular time. We cannot have 2 different consciousnesses there. It's either seeing consciousness or hearing consciousness, but they go very, very, very fast, one after the other. So that's why it is said that, for example, the practice of metta can be used to counteract fear. Because either there is a fear consciousness or a metta consciousness. They cannot coexist at the same time. So through an act of will, you decide, okay, now I'm going to do some metta practice. And I keep in mind this idea, this thought, may I be safe. Now, either there is this thought or the other thought which says, I'm not safe. They cannot be there at the same time. For as long as you say, may I be safe, you are creating, you know, a reality of safeness. Is clear? More or less? Okay? We do not have to believe this, of course. I mean, that is what is proposed by the Buddha, you know, and then we have to realize it through the practice, of course. But that's the framework in which we are sort of operating and moving around. Now, two more things. Just to make an example how these things, they work together, okay? Let's suppose that the telephone rings, okay? The telephone rings. Ring, ring, ring. So, there is my ear faculty that belongs to the material form, if I am not deaf, of course, but if. Suppose we are not deaf. Ringing telephone. Ear. Faculty. Imagine I was really involved into writing something at my desk, and I do not want to be disturbed. Okay? There is a Vedana that arises. Since I do not want to be disturbed, it is an unpleasant feeling. Vedana. Okay? This goes very, very fast, of course. This is happening very, very, very fast in time. And then usually there is a mood of being annoyed. Who is disturbing me? Then of course comes the perception. Okay? There is a perception. You identify, oh, phone ringing. Then comes the volitional activity. I can choose. I can pick up the phone and say hello, or never mind, just let it ring until it stops. Now, another example. Same thing. But beforehand, an old friend has sent me an email. I haven't seen him for a long time. He says, oh, I will call you at 4 o'clock. Okay? And I'm very happy because he's a good friend. I haven't heard from him in a long time. So, the phone rings. Ear, same thing, Now, we have a Vedana which is pleasant. Same thing, but Vedana is pleasant now. So up until Vedana, everything is the same, no problem. Vedana now is pleasant. Since Vedana now is pleasant, there is a different perception. Oh, my friend is calling me, based on memory. You remember that? He sent me an email telling me, I will call you at 4 o'clock. Okay. Perception is, memory is based on perception. Okay. And then there is no doubt this time. I will pick up the phone. That's the volitional activity. You see, these 5 work together all the time, basically. And the last thing, before we end up. When the Buddha speaks about understanding the nature of the 5 khandhas, aggregates, this means to understand them in terms of the 3 universal characteristics, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. First one, we know about impermanence, anicca. The Buddha says that impermanence applies especially to the 5 aggregates. From moment to moment. So, this actual body that we take to be so solid and mine is actually a process which is changing all the time. And through the practice of insight, we look closer and closer and closer and closer. And at a certain point it's not so solid anymore. We just see these things rising and passing away, rising and passing away, rising and passing away, with no control. That's anatta. Anyway. So, So it's a process through we begin to see the reality of things as they really are. By seeing things as they really are, this ancient habit of craving comes to a stop. And since this ancient habit of craving is seen as the source of dukkha, dukkha ends. Not bad. That's it. So, anatta is seen as there is nobody there. Meaning, not any substantial, permanent self, but it's just all the time this process going on, which is never fixed. And of course, these are just concepts, you know. Oh yes, nice theory. I like it. I don't like it. Whatever, you know. But it's the blueprint for what we are actually doing. You know, it's why are we doing all this stuff? Because we want to suffer less, possibly not suffer anymore. Thank you. Why do we suffer? We cling to things, especially me. Is this me so real and solid? No. How do you realize that? You watch closely, closer and closer and closer and closer. And you see these 5 aggregates, which are happening all the time. You know? Arising, passing away, arising very fast. And then you see something else. Something which is not subject to all this nonsense. It's called the unconditioned. And that's it. Voila. So that's it for tonight. Hope it wasn't too heavy and complicated and whatever, you know. But don't try and remember all of this. It's not important, you know. Something will stick here and there. We just need a very basic idea. It can be useful to know, oh, now I get it, you know. That's why we're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going on up until, 10 at night. There is some sort of sanity to it. There's, okay, maybe it's, yes, not so nice all the time, but I begin to see a reason to do this. So that's the basic idea. So thanks a lot for your presence, and 15 minutes walk, then we can come back. Okay? Thank you.